Chapter 1, Way Back When. There were the many talks Harpo Marx shared with my Grandpa Ben. There was the time Marilyn Monroe flashed Grandma Mary. There was the afternoon Lerner and Lowe promised a role to 8-year-old me in their new musical, Camelot. Through the years, I collected a trove of treasured stories while growing up around the Algonquin Hotel as a real-life counterpart to Eloise of the Plaza. New York's landmark Algonquin Hotel was bought in 1946 by my grandparents, Ben and Mary Bodne, Southern Jews atypical of the hotel's literary types and stage folk. They lived there for the rest of their lives, even after selling the hotel in 1987 to a Brazilian subsidiary of a Tokyo corporation, a strange combination leading to a succession of other owners. According to family legend, my grandparents first fell in love with the Algonquin while honeymooning there in the 1920s. They were dazzled to be hobnobbing with guests like Mary Pickford, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Beatrice Lillie, Sinclair Lewis, and Will Rogers, whom they'd just seen in The Ziegfeld Follies, 1924. The Manhattan Hotel already had a multifaceted history. Rather than globetrotters, horse stables once occupied the address, 59 West 44th Street, where the Algonquin opened in 1902. Noted architect Goldwyn Starrett designed this 174-room Edwardian-style hotel. The place became a mecca for rising New York luminaries through the guidance of Frank Case, who'd worked there since its inception and who became its owner-manager in 1927. It was he who suggested that the original owner name the hotel the Algonquin rather than the Puritan. A strong advocate for the arts, Frank Case offered special rates to actors, writers, and artists. He established the Algonquin Round Table, where the likes of Dorothy Parker, George S. Kaufman, Alexander Walcott, and Robert Benchley regularly lunched, exchanging quips and quotes that proved exceptional public relations for the hotel. My grandparents came from a very different background than the urbane Frank Case. Of European Jewish ancestry, Grandpa Ben, Polish-Latvian, and Grandma Mary, Russian, also had large families in common. Grandpa had 3 sisters and 3 brothers. Grandma 7 sisters and 2 brothers. Their homes were already like hotels. Grandpa Ben was born in Shamokin, Pennsylvania, but his Orthodox family eventually moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee. As unlikely as it may be to use Tennessee and Torah in the same sentence. His father, Michael Bodne, after whom I'm named, was a junk dealer. His mother, Molly, cooked food that reportedly tasted like junk, albeit kosher. The family was so poor, young Ben supplemented their family income as a paper boy. Grandpa Ben claimed he first met a celebrity selling her a paper. He believed that woman, who tipped him generously, was Helen Keller. Grandpa never finished school, though he told some funny school stories. He'd relate how, when he was in 9th grade, the teacher called in Grandpa's father for a special meeting, saying, "You have to do something about your son. He's a real smart aleck. Last week I asked Ben who wrote Hamlet, and Ben replied, 'Well, it wasn't me.' To that Grandpa's father said, 'Listen, ma'am, my Benny's a good boy. If he told you he didn't write Hamlet, he didn't write Hamlet.' Grandpa also recounted how he quit school out of embarrassment when he got to the 8th grade and caught up with his father. Where Grandpa Ben excelled were athletics and business. He was a champion athlete at the local YMHA, considered becoming a professional baseball player, and later became promoter for such greats as world boxing champ Marcel Cerdan. In fact, Grandpa's ultimate business decision was choosing between buying the Algonquin Hotel and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Grandma Mary was born in Odessa, Russia, now part of Ukraine, the daughter of Elihu and Anastasia, a.k.a. Essie, Mazo. When she was an infant, her family hid with other Jews in an attic while Cossacks plundered their village. She started to cry, and the terrified fugitives thought they'd have to suffocate her if she continued to endanger them. Then, with precocious insight, she hushed up till it was safe for them to escape. It's said her later outspokenness was compensation for that momentary silence. When Grandma was 6 months old, the Mazos, including older sister Betty, immigrated to Charleston, South Carolina, which had a sizable Jewish population. It's there that Elihu Mazo opened Maes Grocery, Maes, which evolved into one of the first Jewish delis in South Carolina, serving kosher sandwiches. Essie kept busy creating 8 more children, enough to tend the deli and each other. Growing up, it was at Maes that Grandma cultivated her southern hospitality, filling the Knish list of Carolina's Kleinas and Steiners. It was also where she got her first taste, not only of pickles, but of show business. Both Elihu Mazo and his brother Dave, who owned an even bigger, if generic, grocery store, became good friends of a prominent Charlestonian, writer DuBose Haywood. Haywood was best known for his 1925 novel Porgy, based on life in Charleston's Cabbage Row, renamed Catfish Row. The book was later adapted into a hit play by Haywood's wife, Dorothy. DuBose would soon collaborate with George and Ira Gershwin on a musical version of the play. Around 1934, when George Gershwin was researching in Charleston for Porgy and Bess, 1935, the Mazo Deli became one of Gershwin's favorite hangouts. He developed a strong friendship with all the Mazos. At Mazo family dinners, he'd play his newest songs on their piano. He even dated Grandma Mary's beautiful younger sister, Sid, born Sarah Sadie. The Mazos had high hopes of a celebrity in the family until a courtship date when Gershwin bought Aunt Sid a chocolate ice cream cone. She complained. She wanted vanilla. Bad move. The romance soon broke up, possibly over a flavor. By the time Aunt Sid was dating Gershwin, Grandpa Ben had already moved to Charleston, eventually marrying Mary Mazo. He believed there were greater work opportunities in Charleston and a wider choice of Jewish women than in Chattanooga. Grandma Mary had charms Grandpa couldn't resist. She was a dynamo and a much better cook than Molly Bodne. Mary was also quite a dancer, her specialty the Charleston, entering competitions including one where she befriended guest performer Ginger Rogers. Moreover, she was the first in the family accepted at a college. However, she gave up attending Baltimore's Goucher College when Grandpa Ben proposed, driving to meet her in his Model T Ford. She thought that her best option. After growing up with 7 sisters, the prospect of marrying a sporty kosher catch seemed more appealing than 4 years at an all-female college. By the way, another show business connection was Grandma's cousin, Charlestonian Frances Mazo Butwin. Frances and her husband, Julius, wrote the original Yiddish to English translation of Shalom Aleichem Tevye's Daughters, source of Fiddler on the Roof. The authors of Fiddler on the Roof, Joseph Stein, Sheldon Harnick, and Jerry Bach, drew heavily from the Butwin's versions. An early draft of the musical even borrowed the same title as a Butwin volume, The Old Country, 1956. After Grandpa set himself up in business, Ben and Mary worked side by side like a tag team. While Grandpa Ben was building his fortune selling coal, then recycling oil cylinders during World War II, Grandma Mary operated his office and his trucks with enough stamina to deliver through a tsunami. Add to the work burden, Grandma tended to their two daughters, Renee Mae and Barbara Ann. Still, it all paid off. By 1946, Grandpa Ben had become a millionaire via various oil ventures. He had built the first independent deep water terminal in South Carolina. His company had drummed most of the diesel fuel that went into the African campaign of World War II. The time came when he decided to parlay his fortune into a new business. There were two major choices. 1946 was the year Frank Case died, and the Algonquin was up for resale, as were the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pittsburgh Pirates would be a dream come true for Grandpa, who craved being part of professional sports. I suspect Grandma had a different preference than being taken out to the ball game and selling peanuts and Cracker Jack. The Algonquin was a setting where she could mingle with people like George Gershwin and Ginger Rogers. Just the kind of place where she could display the Southern hospitality she cultivated, offering salami, lox, and other delicacies at her father's deli. The choice became moot when a group headed by Bing Crosby pitched a bid on the Pittsburgh Pirates that was a home run. Grandpa struck out, but Grandma was swinging on a star as her husband clinched the remaining deal. The Bodnes picked up their suitcases and daughters and headed to their new address, the venerable Algonquin Hotel. Notwithstanding, there was a hitch to their new hitching post. In the aftermath of World War II, the place was in terrible disrepair, with antiquated plumbing, faded decor, and worn-out furniture, the ghost of a past golden age. Advisors had warned the Bodnes that the hotel's glamour and vitality had died with Frank Case. How could a Southern oil man and his wife restore the former glory of this cultural invalid? The daunting task ahead was just another challenge for Grandma, who'd survived the Cossacks, and Grandpa, who'd survived poverty and his mother's cooking. They somehow knew, as would be sung in the future Algonquin cabaret, the best is yet to come. Times with Lord Olivier, Jacqueline Kennedy, Ella Fitzgerald, and countless others were in the offing, as was I, the Algonquin Kid. But for now, the adventure had just begun.